Okay, so we'll start off with a little bit of backstory on Ariant. Ariant's in like the southwestern part of the Nihal Desert. Azwan's to the north, and Megatia's to like the northeast. Nihal actually means joyous or successful in Arabic, so I guess that's where they got the name from. Net's pyramid's also located in between Ariant and Megatia. So, Ariant was founded around a magical oasis by like wanderers in the Nihal Desert, and due to lithium only being found in the desert, Ariant's like a prosperous city because it's like the sole supplier of it. Currently, in like the lore, the Sultan has grown like super weak, and the Queen is like a bitch, and she taxes the town oppressively to like afford her like luxurious lifestyle. So the people suffer, and the Sand Bandits like seek to revolt against the Queen and do everything that they can to support the people. So for some reason, if you're unfamiliar, you probably remember Ariant as like that one annoying place that Manji and Purion used to send you to because you click too fast through the quests. Or you probably know it now as like that place you pass right through just to go to sand rats and scorpions. The map around Ariant's been changed like a little bit through the years, but the main town and quests haven't really been touched. The level requirement is like around 70 to 85 now. I mean, it's not really required, but it's like the recommended level. It used to be around 30, so yeah. The storyline's still pretty interesting though. So, initially, the citizens of Ariant won't even speak to you because they're like wary of outsiders, and you need to drink from the oasis for them to consider you as someone from the town. It's like a rite of passage or something like that. So for characters, I guess we'll start off with one of the earlier quests that you find in Ariant after you drink from the oasis. You'll find like a kid, Gier, who's worried about his sister, who is the storyteller Shigarazad, whom the queen keeps locked inside the palace for like her own personal entertainment. So you're asked to check on her for him, and the guard, Tegan, or Tigan, states that you're not allowed to enter unless you pay him 2,000 mesos to pay respect to the Sultan. You'll obtain your entry pass, and then from there on, you're like free to enter the palace whenever you want. Since Gier is like super young and he's like separated from his sister, the Sand Bandits take it upon themselves to protect him. Gier sends you to deliver some tea for his sister because he knows that like she tells stories for the queen like all day long. So when you meet Shigarazad, she'll tell you she's like afraid of running out of stories to tell the queen, so she asks you to go get a book from the Helios library around like KFT or Ludibrium. When you get there, the librarian asks you to get Shigarazad's story as a trade because you can't just take a book from the library. You have to replace a story if you're going to borrow something or whatever. So the actual story of Shigarazad comes from a tale of like this Arabic queen. The story goes, there's a king who has a new wife every single day, and at dawn he sends for his previous wife to be beheaded. So he kills like all his wives, and he has a new one every single day. Eventually, Scheherazade, who is the woman from the story, the main character, volunteers to be one of the king's wives, and what she does is she tells a story to the king as he is like super invested in the story and just like listens in awe. But Scheherazade stops telling her story right before the ending as dawn is like approaching. So the king spares her life for another day because he's so interested in her story that he wants her to finish it, but she's like playing him, you know. And she starts to tell another afterwards. So basically this goes on for like 1,000 nights, and she tells like 1,000 stories, but then at exactly 1,000, for some reason, she completely runs out of stories to tell. And at this point, she's like afraid for her life and everything, but the king has actually fallen in love with her and spares her life forever. And she's just like the queen. So that's where they got the name for this NPC and the story for the Helios library. So since you're basically in the throne room at this point, you can talk to the queen. She'll constantly make remarks about how hot and useless the desert is and how it's not even the place for a fairy like her, but she's not actually even a real fairy. So she sends you to fetch her like an expensive makeup kit due to her face breaking out, which I don't think fairy skin breaks out in pimples or whatever, but whatever. And demands that you bring her fairy tea as well. So it's actually believed that the queen put a spell on Sultan Abdullah, who just kind of like sits around and sleeps all day, but like by the people it's believed. But on the Maple website, it's like confirmed that she did put a curse on him, but who knows how. So Siren is probably going to be the next NPC that you meet. She's a belly dancer, one of the citizens of Ariant, and aspires to one day dance inside of the palace. She doesn't think that her dancing skills are like super impressive enough for the queen, so she basically asks you to get her stuff to make her dancing better, like snake bells or a dancer sword, or dancing swords, or swords for dancing. They're props, whatever, made by the blacksmith in town, Muhammad, who works with Lydium. And then later on, she also helps you to join the Sand Bandits. So the Sand Bandits are actually despised by the queen. They disguise themselves as like the common folk in town. And as you try to help the citizens of Ariant, because you're the Maple hero, you eventually have to end up joining the Sand Bandits in order to progress at all. They allow you to join after you've done multiple tasks for them, I guess, like stealing the queen's treasure, or feeding the town, or defeating monsters, you know, the usual. You eventually meet the leader of the Sand Bandits, Jano, or Jano, or Jono, or I don't know, but he asks you to steal more supplies from the queen by using like this transformation potion that you get to use to turn into the guard, Tegan or Tigan. And then you eventually also have to complete a bounty for them on Dio. Dio is actually like an ancient royal cactus that evolves into a monster. That's how it's like explained in the lore, I guess. A lot of people of the town worship him as like the guardian of the desert, so you actually have to convince the people first before you go and kill him. So Muhammad is actually the person you have to go and convince. He's kind of like the spokesperson, like that guy in Skyrim in Whiterun that just like preaches about whatever. But once you do that, you can go and kill Dio. So later on, when you're traveling around the monster maps of Ariant, you'll find a member of the Red Scorpions that impersonates being a sand bandit and has you like collect and steal stuff for him. Later on, you'll find out that he's not actually a sand bandit because Siren tells you, because she actually steals something that you stole from. It's kind of confusing, but whatever. She'll help you make up for your mistakes by pointing you out to their hideout so you can steal more stuff. The hideout is actually pretty cool because you have to type in a password to enter. The password is actually just open sesame. In the quest line, it tells you that you actually already know the password. I mean, it's a common saying for opening doors, but, you know, it's a cool, secluded map. So after you've done all that kind of stuff, there's actually one more character around Ariant that you can do stuff with. It's a character named Le Petit Prince. He's found around the outskirts of Ariant towards Megatia on the Burning Sands Road or whatever. He's actually from a story that's been convoluted by the Dimensional Rift and Ludibrium. You'll find that out when you go to Helios Library for Scheherazade. So the story of Le Petit Prince is actually from a novella that comes from a French author, and it was like published in 1943. It's actually probably one of the cooler stories that's tied into MapleStory. I mean, they copied it like almost exactly the same, but I mean, it's just a really cool backstory. So the narrator of that story ends up crashing his plane in the Sahara Desert and is greeted by a young boy that he refers to as the Little Prince from then on. And they quickly become like really good friends. So the prince is actually from a different planet that he was like in charge of or took care of. And one day a rose grew on it. He befriends the rose, but eventually he catches the rose lying and gets like really depressed and leaves his planet. And then he travels around to different planets and finds out that flowers don't actually live forever. So he starts missing the rose that he left behind. He eventually lands on Earth in the desert, and then he speaks to a snake that says his poison can send him back up to the heavens if he wants to go be with his rose again. But the prince denies that offer. Eventually the prince is like roaming around and he finds a rose garden around like a mountain or something, and it really depresses him because the rose from his planet told him that it was the only one of its kind. And then sometime the prince like befriends a fox, just like the librarian from the Helios library says, and the fox teaches him that the important things in life are in his heart. We end up replacing the fox with ourselves in the story, so we're the ones that befriends the little prince. But in the story, the prince feels so lonely that he's like so far away from his rose that he makes a deal with the snake to go back to his planet again. This story's actually like super sad because the prince like dies, and then the narrator's like kind of happy that he can't find the prince's body because that means that the prince actually did go back up to the heavens. It's kind of weird, but whatever. I'll leave a link in the description if you guys want to like read it. So that's kind of everything current about Ariant, I guess. Nothing really gets solved. Queen is still in power. The people of Ariant are still suffering. The king is still under the curse. The one kid's sister is still imprisoned, but that's the lore of Ariant in current timeline, I guess. I hope I'm not missing too much. I don't know anything really about the Zero quests that go on in Ariant. I know you have to answer a few questions for Shigerazad or something, and then there's some other stuff with Phantom's storyline where he hides some stuff in a cave or something in Ariant or around Ariant. I don't really know too much about that, but yeah. If there's anything I'm like significantly missing, let me know.